Hi guys, in this video I'm going to explain you how to work with strokes here in Illustrator and how to set different properties when we use them, okay? So the first thing we need to make sure before we start is to have the right units to work, because in here, as you can see, the first exercises or practices that you will have to do are measured in points. So how do we do that? First, we have to make sure that we have the selection tool active. Then we are going to go to the properties panel, and in here I will choose pixels. Then I will go to preferences, and in this part I will go to units. I will make sure that the three units that I have here are points, either for the stroke, the type, and general. If, for example, later we are going to create an artwork that will be measured in centimeters, in pixels, etc., here in preferences and in units is the place where we can change those, okay? But for now, we are going to work with points. And then we will click OK. Now, we have two artworks here. The first artwork is you're going to create these strokes, and each one of the strokes has its own settings, okay? So for example, this one is 10 points, then 40 points, and so on. And in this part, you will create only the things that are in gray. For example, in this part, you will create the lines for the arrows. You will create here a circle, the star, but as you can see, some of these lines are dashed lines, others have rounded edges, these ones are dotted or lined, dashed lines, okay? So I'm going to explain you how to do those, and then you will practice creating this or finishing this digital worksheet. Now, let me move here on the side so I can explain you. The first thing is to use the pen tool to start creating either a path, a curve, or a shape, okay? So I will explain you with two things. A straight line, which I'm pressing Shift to create it, a straight line, I'll press Escape, and then a simple shape, like a triangle, okay? So I will create a triangle, and now I have a path and a shape. I will press V to activate my selection tool. And first I'm going to work with this object, which is the basic stroke. I will remove the fill because I don't need this. And if you remember, if we double click in this part, I can open the colors, or I can double click also here in the color picker to change the color, okay? So that's the first setting we can change to our stroke here in the properties panel. Then we have the measurement of those lines. So for example, the weight, this is called the weight. So for example, in here, it's asking you to create a straight line of 10 points. So you will do that. You will press P, you will start by clicking like this, press Escape, and then you will choose 10 points. You will pick your own color, and that's how you create the first line, okay? How are you going to do the rest of it? Okay, so let me go back to this example. So I will click in there. The weight is in here. It's very simple to just set it. But if I click here in this underline option where it says stroke, I can open more settings. The first one is the weight, so I can easily increase and decrease the weight of my stroke. How am I doing this really fast? I use the scroll in my mouse. If you don't have a mouse to work with, you can simply use these arrows or type here the exact value you're looking for, okay? So what I'll do here, I'm going to increase it, and also I'm going to zoom in because I want you to pay attention or close attention to the ends. Now, in here we have three options below the weight: the cap, the corner, and the alignment of the stroke. The cap is the way my straight lines or my paths that are not closed will end. So for example, this one, the butt cap, is completely straight and is all the way to the edge of my stroke, okay? The second option, the middle one, as you can see, is a rounded cap, okay? And the third one, it's called the projecting cap because it projects a little bit more of that stroke after that path is ended, okay? Now, so again, we have the butt cap, then we have the round cap, and then we have the projecting cap, okay? Now, what about the corners? In the case of a shape, like here, okay, I will remove the fill again and I will change the color of the stroke. I will increase the weight in here. I will make it bigger so that you can see better. Let me change the color there so we can see the contrast between the path and the stroke, okay? So if I click here in stroke, I can see that if I click in cap, nothing happens because this is not for closed shapes. This is for paths that have a visible ending. But in this case, if instead of me wanting these pointy ends, like in this option, the miter join, if I click in the second option, which is called the round join, then the edges of my shape change to a more rounded shape, okay? And if I click in this third option, we can see how those ends kind of like cut, okay? So these are the corners for the shapes. Remember, these are the caps for paths that have an ending, and the corners are for closed like shapes. Now, in this part, we have 3 types of alignment. The first one, we can see that the stroke aligns to the center of my path. So in this case, my path stays in the center of my stroke. If I click in the second option, it says align stroke to the inside. That means that I will have the path and the stroke will be inside that stroke, okay? That path, sorry. And if I click in the third one, in this case, now the stroke will be outside of the path, okay? So we have these 3 different options. And it works the same with single lines, okay? Let me change again the color so we can see the contrast. So if I click here in stroke, I have, as you can see, only the cap options are active. And you have if I click on the shape, I can see the cap, the corner, and the align stroke, okay? Now, I'm going to get back here to this line, and I will go to the properties, the stroke properties again. Now, in here, we just saw the cap, but if I click in this second properties, I click in dashed line, I can see how that stroke or that line is like splitted, is dashed, okay? Now, we have 2 different settings here for my dashed line. I have the size of the dash, the actual line, and the gap, which is the spacing between each dash, okay? So if I decrease, for example, the size of my dash, it will become more thin or thinner. And if I increase it, we can see it becomes bigger, okay? Now, if I click here on the gap, let me put 1 so I can start with something. As you can see, this is the spacing between each dash, okay? Now, I can also change the cap in here. This is a butt cap, but if I change it to a round cap, let me increase the size here. As you can see, now we have more rounded dashes, and if I decrease, we can see that the minimum is 0 points, and it will convert my dash into circles or a dotted line. But in order for us to accomplish this, it is very important that the cap is rounded, because if I leave it in butt cap, the effect is completely different, okay? So this is how you're going to experiment and practice with the lines. As you can see, it says here 40 points, and do you see that the cap is straight? Then this one is 60 points, and it's a round cap. These are dashed lines with different properties, with the size in points of the dash and the points for the gap, okay? Now, what about the arrows? I will go back to this path. I will go to my stroke and remove this option or deactivate the dashed line. Now, we have the arrowheads. This one is for our left, and this is for our right. And we have all of these options for arrows. We don't have to trace them, okay, completely. So for example, if I like this one, arrow 16, that will be on my left, and this will be the ending, okay? Now, if it's too big, like in this case, we have the scale. So I can decrease the scale so it fits better to my, to the, like, it is more proportioned to the size of my, to the weight of my stroke, okay? Again, if you have the exact value, you can put it in here, you can use the arrows. And in this part, in profile, we have different types of, let me remove the arrow so you can see it better. There. This is how several strokes will end. Let me deselect it. So as you can see, this gives a more natural, kind of like organic type of feeling to my strokes. This is very useful when we are creating, for example, eyelashes. Okay, if that would be an eyelash, for example, I would increase the size. And if I have these type of endings, it will look weird to have that as an eyelash. But if I click in this part, then we can see how that eyelash is different, okay? In this exercise, we are not going to work with the profiles. We are only going to work with weights, with dashed lines, and with arrows, okay? So the first thing you will do is to read the instructions here, okay? It says 40 points. You can create a second line here by pressing Shift and then changing the properties on the here on the properties panel or the appearance panel over here. And when you move on to this artwork, what you will do is the same. For example, in the case of the H, what you will do is that to create that letter H, okay? Something like that. I will press Escape, and you will try to guess which options did I choose to create the H. So the first thing we would have to do is to increase the size, something like that, like the weight of my stroke. And as you see, it is not a butt cap, it is a round cap, okay? So as simple as that, you have the first one. And then the second one, you will have to figure it out which properties I used for the stroke. So in this part, these are not shapes, okay? These are lines. So you would have to create a curve, like in this case, go to stroke, and these belong to the arrowhead options. As you can see in this part, we have circles, we have squares that are going to help you with the endings of these two lines that you have in here. Okay, so that's what you are going to do. The objective is for you to understand how to set different properties for the stroke. Okay.